There comes a point in every man's life when he realizes words have lost their value. You've explained yourself, you've defended yourself, you've argued, pleaded, shouted, reasoned, and none of it mattered. Because when someone no longer respects you, every word you give them is just fuel. Fuel for their ego, fuel for their pride, fuel for the game they're playing at your expense. And that's when the truth hits you. The sharpest weapon in a man's arsenal isn't his voice, it's his silence. Silence is heavier than words. It is sharper than any insult and more final than any explanation. When you go silent, when you pull back your presence, you deliver a kind of message no speech could ever carry. Because silence cannot be argued with. Silence cannot be mocked. Silence cannot be twisted. It just hangs in the air, undeniable. This is where Dark Stoicism comes alive. The Stoics never taught us to beg for understanding. They taught us to master ourselves, to retreat from chaos, to remove our energy from what does not honor it. And in relationships, in love, in heartbreak, silence is how that philosophy becomes a weapon. When you remove your words, you create a void, and that void is louder than thunder. She feels it in the quiet moments, in the empty space where your attention once lived. Silence has a cruel honesty to it. It forces her to see what life really looks like without you. And most of the time it looks colder, emptier, and lonelier than she ever imagined. This is the moment when silence becomes more than absence. It becomes presence. Your absence begins to haunt her. Your silence becomes the ghost she can't shake off. Every time she checks her phone, every time she replays the last words you said, every time she expects you to show up and you don't. That's when she finally begins to understand. And here's the beauty of it. You didn't have to chase. You didn't have to argue. You didn't have to humiliate yourself for her attention. You simply removed your voice, and in doing so, you took away her control. Dark Stoicism teaches us that real strength lies not in what you do, but in what you refuse to do. Your silence proves you are no longer playing her game. And once she realizes that, the weight of it will hit harder than anything you could have said. Brothers, if you feel the power of this truth, don't just sit in silence, show your support. Like this video, subscribe to Stoic Blessing and drop a comment below, sharing how silence has shifted your own journey. Let's keep building this Stoic army together. Most people misunderstand silence. They think it's weakness. They think it's avoidance. They think if you're not shouting, not arguing, not proving your point, you must have lost. But the truth is, silence is the darkest edge of Stoic discipline. It's restraint sharpened into power. The weak lash out. The weak explain themselves over and over, hoping to be understood. The weak fight battles with words, thinking if they just say the right thing, everything will change. But the Stoic doesn't waste breath on what cannot be changed. He doesn't explain himself to the unworthy. He doesn't hand his energy to those who trample it. He withdraws. He cuts off the flow. He lets silence speak for him. And here's where the darkness comes in. Silence is not passive. It's not neutral. It's active punishment. Because humans crave noise. They crave attention, validation, and reaction. When you remove those things, when you disappear, when you give them nothing, that's when the torment begins. Dark Stoicism says, your silence is the mirror in which others are forced to see themselves. When she can no longer argue with you, when she can no longer feed off your reactions, she is left alone with her own reflection. And that reflection is often uglier, lonelier, and more painful than anything you could have said to her. Think of it like this. An insult can be brushed off, an argument can be twisted, even anger can be laughed at. But silence? Silence lingers. Silence grows heavier the longer it lasts. Silence becomes a weight pressing down on her mind, until she's forced to face the one thing she never wanted to admit, that your presence mattered more than she realized. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." In this case, she may expect chaos, reaction, desperation. Instead, you give her nothing. That nothing is the blade. It's the coldest form of power, and eventually she'll feel it. This is why silence in Dark Stoicism is not avoidance. It is judgment. It is you declaring without a single word that she is no longer worthy of your voice. Noise is easy. Anyone can raise their voice. Anyone can argue, beg, plead, or curse. But noise always gives away power because it reveals desperation, and desperation is weakness. When she disrespected you, when she pulled away, when she tried to test your worth, your instinct might have been to react, to explain, to prove her wrong, to shout into the storm, hoping she'd finally listen. But that's where most men destroy themselves, because the louder you get, the less she hears. The more you chase, the faster she runs. The more you try to explain, the more she dismisses you. Noise loses power because it gives her proof that she still controls you. Every long text, every late-night call, every argument you fall into, it tells her that your emotions are still chained to her decisions. And as long as you're chained, she doesn't need to respect you. But silence. Silence flips the script. When you stop explaining, when you stop defending, when you stop reacting altogether, she no longer has proof. She no longer has control. She no longer has the comfort of knowing you're still tied to her. The Stoics understood this perfectly. Seneca warned that anger consumes the one who feels it more than the one it's directed at. Arguments weaken the speaker, not the listener. But silence. Silence consumes the other person. Silence forces them to wrestle with questions they can't answer. Silence becomes the loudest sound in their world. This is why noise fails and silence wins, because noise is about her. It's about chasing her validation, chasing her recognition, chasing her reaction. But silence is about you. It's about reclaiming your control, your discipline, your peace. And when she realizes you are no longer feeding her with words, no longer playing the game, no longer giving her the energy she once thrived on, that's when the shift happens. That's when the power returns to you. Noise is weakness. Silence is dominance. And once you understand that, you will never waste another word on someone unworthy of hearing your voice. Something strange happens when you stop reacting, when you stop chasing, when you stop giving her the constant stream of your attention. At first, she might feel powerful. She might think, "He finally left me alone. I've won, but give it time, and you'll notice something. The energy begins to shift." Because silence doesn't just remove noise, it changes the entire balance of power. When you were reacting, she was in control. Every time you reached out, you confirmed her value. Every time you explained yourself, you confirmed her importance. Every time you broke your discipline, you confirmed she still had you. But when you go silent, that supply line is cut off. Suddenly, the control she thought she had vanishes. At first, she may try to ignore it. Pride will tell her, "It doesn't matter. I don't need him," but pride can only last so long against reality. And reality is this: the energy she once fed on is gone. The attention that validated her is gone. The comfort of knowing you'd always be there, gone. Dark Stoicism teaches that power flows to the one who needs less. And when you choose silence, you prove you don't need her validation, her presence, or even her response. You show that your world doesn't collapse without her. And that terrifies her, because deep down, she expected you to crumble. This is the moment she begins to feel the weight of your absence. This is the moment she realizes silence is not emptiness, it is pressure. It presses against her pride, her ego, her assumptions. It makes her wonder, why hasn't he reached out? Has he moved on? Did I overplay my hand? And here's the paradox. The longer you stay silent, the heavier the energy becomes. She thought silence would free her, but it enslaves her. She thought you would chase, but you disappeared. She thought she had control, but the control has slipped entirely into your hands. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. That's exactly what's happening. The moment you master your mind, you master the dynamic. She may still be silent, but your silence grows heavier than hers. She may still pretend to be strong, but your indifference unsettles her in ways she'll never admit. This is the shift in energy. Silence flips the game. And once the shift happens, she can no longer deny the truth. You are the one in control. When you go silent, you don't just take yourself away, you leave behind something far more unsettling, a mirror made of absence. And the longer that absence lasts, the clearer the reflection becomes. When you were present, you were her distraction. Your messages, your energy, your attention, these things gave her something to react to, something to deflect with, something to lean on. But once you remove them, she is left with nothing but herself. And that is the most terrifying thing of all. Because silence forces reflection. It leaves her alone with her choices, alone with her pride, alone with the emptiness that your absence has uncovered. She cannot point the finger at you anymore. She cannot twist your words or drown your truth in arguments. All she has is the void, and in that void, her mind begins to betray her. She replays the last conversations. She analyzes the last moments. She wonders why you didn't come back, why you didn't break, why you didn't do what she expected. That wondering is the mirror. Every unanswered question, every hollow moment, every flash of doubt, it all reflects her back to herself. The Stoics understood this phenomenon well. Seneca wrote, "It is the power of the mind to be unconquerable." And what is more unconquerable than silence? It cannot be bargained with. It cannot be manipulated. It simply reflects. And that reflection is merciless. Your absence forces her to see what life really looks like without you. No safety net, no validation, no one to absorb the weight of her moods. For the first time, she is forced to sit in her own emptiness. And that is when the punishment begins. This is why silence is so much more powerful than words. Words can be denied. Presence can be taken for granted. But absence cannot be faked. It cannot be avoided. It stares back at her like a mirror she cannot put down. And the cruelest truth of all, that mirror never shows her you. It only shows her herself, alone, unacknowledged, unheard. That's the torment. That's the lesson. That's the mirror of absence. At first, she may shrug off your silence. Pride is stubborn. Ego is loud. She tells herself stories to stay comfortable. He'll be back. He always comes back. He can't stay away from me forever. And for a while, that belief protects her. But time is the enemy of false confidence. Because as the days stretch into weeks, the cracks begin to show. It begins in small ways. She scrolls through her phone and notices the empty space where your name once lit up her screen. She checks her notifications, expecting to see you, and finds nothing. She sees something funny or something that reminds her of you and instinctively wants to share it, but stops because you're not there anymore. That tiny pause plants the first seed of doubt. Then the silence grows heavier. She starts to wonder, why hasn't he reached out? What is he doing? Has he moved on? Did I push too far? Every unanswered question multiplies in her mind, creating an echo chamber of doubt and regret. What she once thought was power now feels like loss. What she once thought was control now feels like a mistake. This is the moment when your absence becomes undeniable. She doesn't just notice it, she feels it. In the empty mornings, in the quiet nights, in the places where your presence once brought comfort. Silence follows her like a shadow. It lingers in every pause, every reminder, every quiet thought she can't push away. And here's the paradox. She'll never admit it at first. Pride won't allow it. She might even double down, posting, pretending, acting unbothered. But inside, the silence is working. It's pressing against her ego. It's carving out the truth she doesn't want to face, that she is no longer in control, and that your silence has a weight she can't escape. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best answer to anger is silence." And this is the proof. Your silence becomes the answer she never expected. She thought you would react, explain, defend yourself. Instead, you gave her nothing, and in that nothing, she finally begins to understand. This is the stage where the punishment of silence transforms into realization, and realization is always heavier than words. Silence is not easy. Anyone can send a message, anyone can chase, anyone can beg for attention. That takes no strength at all. But to remain silent, to resist the urge to break, to sit in the storm without flinching, that requires discipline of the highest order. Discipline is what separates the ordinary man from the Stoic. It is what separates the weak from the unshakable. Because silence tests you just as much as it punishes her. Every moment you hold your ground, you are sharpening your will. Every day you remain calm, you are proving that you control your emotions, not the other way around. The weak man believes discipline is about forcing her to notice him, but the Stoic knows discipline is about refusing to notice her silence. He does not measure his strength by whether she comes back. He measures it by whether he stayed true to himself, whether he kept his frame, whether he chose dignity over desperation. Epictetus taught that freedom is found in self-mastery, and silence is the purest form of self-mastery. Because you are resisting not her, but yourself. You are conquering the restless voice in your mind that says, break it, reach out, end the discomfort. That voice is your true enemy, not her silence, not her pride. And when you conquer that voice, you conquer everything. And here's the paradox. While you're building discipline, she's losing hers. While you're sitting calmly in the silence, she's pacing in it. While you grow stronger by resisting, she grows weaker by wondering. That is why silence is a double-edged sword. You forge yourself on one side while she bleeds on the other. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That is the lesson in silence. She is an outside event. Her silence is an outside event. But your restraint, your calm, your refusal to bend, that belongs to you, and that is the only power that matters. So remember this. Silence is not just punishment for her, it is training for you. A test of your discipline, a forge for your strength. And once you master it, you are no longer just practicing silence. You are practicing freedom. Every silence has a weight, and every weight eventually becomes unbearable. At first, she wore your absence like armor. She told herself she didn't care, that she was fine without you, that your silence meant nothing. But the truth is, silence is like water against stone. It wears down even the hardest pride, one drop at a time. The breaking point doesn't happen with fireworks. It happens quietly. It's in the late-night scroll through old messages, wondering why your name doesn't appear anymore. It's in the sudden urge to type your number into her phone, only to stop because she doesn't want to admit defeat. It's in the creeping thought that maybe, just maybe, you weren't the one who lost. You were the one who escaped. That's when your silence turns from absence into presence. You're not there, yet you're everywhere. You're in her thoughts when she wakes. You're in her doubts before she sleeps. You're in the questions that won't leave her mind. Why hasn't he broken yet? Why hasn't he chased me? Has he truly moved on? Did he stop caring altogether? And that's the cruel beauty of silence. It forces her to answer questions you never even asked. Every possible answer hurts her. If she thinks you've moved on, she feels abandoned. If she thinks you've stopped caring, she feels replaced. If she thinks you're stronger than her, she feels exposed. The silence becomes a labyrinth with no exit, and she is trapped inside. This is the breaking point. The moment when your silence can no longer be dismissed. The moment she finally understands that your absence was not weakness, not avoidance, not fear. It was discipline. It was strength. It was the power she underestimated until it consumed her. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best way of avenging yourself is not to become like the wrongdoer." That's exactly what happened. While she played games, you mastered yourself. While she waited for your reaction, you gave her nothing. While she thought she was in control, your silence quietly dismantled her illusion. At the breaking point, she finally sees what she lost. Not because you told her, not because you chased her, but because your silence made her realize it on her own. Silence doesn't just punish her, it transforms you. What feels at first like emptiness slowly reveals itself to be opportunity. The void she left behind becomes the space where you rebuild yourself, where you grow, where you step into a version of yourself stronger than the man she once knew. When you stop chasing, you start creating. The energy you once poured into late-night arguments, long explanations, endless overthinking, you reclaim it. You redirect it into the gym, into your craft, into your discipline, into your purpose. The same silence that once felt unbearable becomes the forge where your strength is hammered into steel. This is where Dark Stoicism shines, because the silence is not a waiting room, it's a training ground. While she's out there wondering why you haven't broken, you are transforming. While she's scrolling through memories, you are building new realities. While she is haunted by your absence, you are no longer haunted at all. You are free. Seneca wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." And what greater trial is there than silence? The nights when you want to reach out but don't. The days when you want to check her life but resist. Every time you choose silence over weakness, you polish yourself into someone sharper, clearer, stronger. And here's the paradox. The more you transform, the less you care whether she ever understands, because by then you'll see the truth. You never needed her recognition. You never needed her approval. You only needed to master yourself. This is why silence is sacred. It is not just absence. It is rebirth. It is the space where you realize your worth was never tied to her, never tied to her silence, never tied to her attention. Your worth is yours alone, and no one can take it from you. So while she feels the weight of your absence, you rise in the light of your presence, and by the time she finally understands, you'll be too far ahead to look back. At the end of it all, silence was never weakness. It was never avoidance. It was never surrender. It was power, pure, disciplined, merciless power. And when she finally understands it, it's already too late. Because silence doesn't just punish her, it frees you. Dark Stoicism teaches us that victory isn't found in noise. It isn't found in chasing or proving or begging to be seen. Victory is found in restraint, in the calm refusal to play games, in the quiet strength of a man who chooses his dignity over his desperation. When you chose silence, you stopped asking for validation. You stopped handing away your energy. You stopped fighting battles that could never be won with words. And in that moment, you reclaimed yourself. That is when the power shifted forever. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Silence is a lesson learned from the many sufferings of life." You've learned that lesson, you've carried the weight, and you've turned it into strength. So let her feel the emptiness, let her wrestle with the mirror of your absence, let her finally understand the cost of losing a man who mastered himself. Because in the end, her silence means nothing, but your silence. That's everything. That's freedom. That's discipline. That's Dark Stoicism. Brothers, if this message spoke to you, show your strength. Like this video, subscribe to Stoic Blessing, and drop a comment below sharing how silence has changed your own life. Let's keep building the Stoic army together, one disciplined man at a time.